In the late 19th century, the British Empire stood at the height of its global power. Its red-colored territories wrapped around the globe like a stretched crown. But in the heart of southern Africa, two small, stubborn, deeply independent republics remained defiant. The South African Republic, also known as Transvaal, and the Orange Free State. These were Boer lands home to descendants of Dutch settlers who had trekked inland decades earlier to escape British rule. They were farmers, riders, sharpshooters, and fiercely protective of their independence. But beneath their soil lay something the world could not ignore. Gold, rivers of gold discovered in the Transvaal in the 1880s. And when gold enters the picture, empires begin to move like hungry shadows. Cut to London smoke rising from chimneys, politicians arguing, newspapers screaming headlines. The discovery of gold transformed the Boer territory into one of the richest lands in the world. Tens of thousands of British miners poured into the region seeking fortune. But the Boer government refused to give them political rights. Tensions rose. British leaders, especially Colonial Secretary Joseph Chamberlain, began whispering that Boer resistance needed to be corrected. Quietly but undoubtedly, the road to war began forming. Now the camera sweeps back to Africa, steam trains rolling, soldiers unloading crates of ammunition, whispers spreading across farms and villages. The British are preparing. The Boers, proud and used to hardship, were not intimidated. They issued an ultimatum to Britain in October 1899. Remove your troops from our borders, or face consequences. London laughed off the demand, but they would not laugh for long. As war officially erupts, the narrative accelerates. The Boers, many of them simple farmers with no formal military training, launch a swift and shockingly successful offensive. With unmatched knowledge of the terrain and expert marksmanship, they surround British garrisons in Ladysmith, Kimberley, and Mafeking. The world watches in disbelief as one of the greatest empires is pushed onto the defensive by mounted guerrilla fighters wearing wide-brimmed hats and carrying long, deadly rifles. The sieges begin, weeks turn into months. In Ladysmith, hunger tightens its grip. In Mafeking, civilians huddle in underground shelters as shells rain from the sky. But even under grim desperation, stories of courage spread. A young British officer named Robert Baden-Powell, the future founder of the Scouts, organizes civilian defenses with almost theatrical flair, turning Mafeking's resistance into a global sensation. But the British Empire does not remain humiliated for long. Reinforcements begin pouring in, hundreds of ships crossing the oceans, unloading tens of thousands of fresh troops. Red tunics replaced by khaki. Artillery positions built with terrifying efficiency. The Empire was now fully awake. The camera shifts to the Battle of Colonial, then to Spion Kop, where British soldiers climb into thick fog only to discover at dawn that they're trapped on exposed rock, becoming silhouettes for Boer snipers. The battlefield becomes a nightmare. Men fall in heaps. Medical officers scramble through mud and bodies. Even a young Winston Churchill, at that time a war correspondent, narrowly escapes capture. Slowly, brutally, painfully, Britain forces its way through. By mid-1900, the major Boer cities fall: Bloemfontein, Johannesburg, Pretoria. Flags are lowered, and British banners rise. London declares victory. Newspapers celebrate. The Empire congratulates itself. But the war is far from over. What Britain fails to understand is that Boers do not fight for territory, they fight for survival, for family, for faith, for the right to live free. And so begins one of the most remarkable guerrilla resistance campaigns in modern history. The narrative darkens. Small Boer commandos, groups of a dozen or 20, race across the veldt on horseback, striking supply lines, derailing trains, raiding outposts, then melting into the wilderness. The British respond with a different kind of war, one far harsher, colder, and devastating. General Lord Kitchener introduces a scorched-earth strategy. Boer homesteads, simple, peaceful farms, are set ablaze by British troops. Livestock slaughtered, wells poisoned, crops burned to ash. And worst of all, Boer families, women, children, the elderly are rounded up and placed into detention camps. The camera slows into a somber, haunting sequence. These camps, later known as concentration camps, become symbols of suffering. Disease spreads like shadow. Supplies are scarce. Thousands of children die. Mothers bury sons in soil still warm from fires. Journalists begin exposing the horrific conditions to the world. And the British public, once cheering, begins questioning the morality of the empire. Yet, despite unthinkable hardship, Boer fighters continue resisting, led by iconic commanders like Christian de Wet and Koos de la Rey, who turn guerrilla warfare into an art. They slip through British blockhouses, ambush patrols, and survive on sheer determination. Their resilience becomes legendary. But even legends have limits. After 3 long years of war, the toll is too heavy. Fields are destroyed, families shattered, thousands dead, livestock gone. The young republics are starving, empty, exhausted. The year is 1902. Both sides gather in a small town called Vereeniging. A long wooden table, men with hollow eyes. Ink, paper, silence. The treaty that follows the Treaty of Vereeniging ends the war. The Boer republics are absorbed into the British Empire. Independence. Lost. But as the narrator's voice grows softer, there is one final twist. Though the Boers are defeated militarily, their spirit remains unbroken. Britain offers funds to rebuild farms. The Boers regain influence in politics. And within a generation, the descendants of the very people who once fought Britain end up leading the new Union of South Africa. The camera slowly rises back over the plains. The Second Boer War leaves deep scars on the land, on families, on the empire itself. It exposes the harsh realities of colonial ambition and the incredible resilience of ordinary people fighting for their homeland. It reshapes military strategy, births modern guerrilla warfare, and forces the world to confront the cost of imperial power. And though more than a century has passed, the echoes of this war still linger in the dust, the memories, and the soul of Southern Africa. As the sun sets, the narrator whispers the final words. This was not just a war between empires and republics. It was a war between pride and survival. A war that changed nations, broke hearts, and reminded the world that no empire, no matter how vast, is invincible.